following podcast contains mature language and may not be suitable for younger audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Talks about how he was over, I don't know how many Satanists, call them churches. He was like the bishop.
You gotta be kidding me.
What was in her heart? You don't know what sin she'd committed. You don't know how much unbelief was there. You don't know whether she hated her husband.
I don't think so.
Why would anybody spend so much time ranting and raving about something that they don't believe in?
Really?
Welcome to Skeptics Brew Pub with Brother Brewer. Hey guys, welcome to episode 48 of Skeptics Brew Pub. I'm Brother Brewer, and tonight I was going to have the Atheist Nomads, Dustin, Wesley, and Lauren on to talk about the Atheist Nomads podcast, but it seems over the weekend we had our second annual 100-year flood here in Walmart Mecca. It's everything here at my house is fine. We're everybody's safe. We're good to go. But I was worried that because here if it just rains a little bit and gets wet, my internet connection through Cox gets kind of wonky. So I didn't want to try to record and keep losing them and have them waste their time for a podcast that, just as small as mine. So I did reschedule with them. I'm working to reschedule with them. I'm hoping to get them on in June. And I do want to congratulate Dustin and Lauren. They're actually expecting. They're going to be having their first child, I believe, here in a few months. So congratulations to you guys. I'm hoping I can get you on the podcast again in June, or bring you on in June. That's the dry season, so we shouldn't have anything more than extreme heat then. So we'll see what happens. If you guys want to check them out, the podcast website is atheistnomads.com. They're really good. Dustin, it was a seminary student. It actually has a degree, I believe it's a MDiv degree from a Seventh-day Adventist seminary. So he's pretty well versed. And one of the things that I wanted to talk with him about tonight was some of the similarities between the Pentecostalism that I grew up with and Seventh-day Adventism, because they do have a lot in common, it seems. But that's going to have to wait. So I still wanted to be able to put a show out tonight, and so what I did was, or what I'm doing tonight is working on I'm calling it a letter to believers. A couple of things inspired it. It was, part of it was a couple of Facebook conversations that I was involved in. One of them was with a complete stranger on a Facebook friend's feed. It was an existence of God kind of thing. But the other ones were more along the lines of evolution. It's more or less misunderstandings, but they're purposeful because these family members of mine, they don't want to know anything more. I even offered next week I'm having Rachel Nennan Brown on. She was on the Atheist on Air a few years back when it was running with Cash. She works in the paleontology field. She's very well versed in evolutionary theory. So I was going to have her on to talk about some of these misconceptions that that my family had voiced, and to explain why what they were thinking is not exactly how it works, but they told me they're not interested. But that happened, and then this second 100-year flood in 2 years. So I wanted to talk about something that, it's kind of important to me, at least. And it's one of the reasons why I usually am wishy-washy on this, but why I think that religion is not necessarily a good thing. I'm not going to get into the God, the whole whether or not God exists. That's beside the point in this point. I'm not going to get into evolutionary debate because, like I said, evolution is going to be covered next week with Rachel. But these are kind of things that I do want to talk about. And yes, I am going to say some things that are going to sound offensive. There's going to be an explicit tagged onto the Spreaker recording that's going to go out tomorrow on this, and that's because I'm going to say some things that people are going to get offended by if you're a believer, and I don't mean to offend you. These are not attacks on you. They're attacks on the ideas that I think are bad ideas. So let me go ahead and get started on this. I had to write notes. This is more or less off the cuff. I haven't rehearsed anything here, but I do want to thank J.T. Eberhard and Callie Wright, both of them. A few years ago, J.T. Eberhard did a presentation for Skepticon called Dear Christian, and Callie Wright here at ReasonCon not too long ago did her own love letter to science, which I thought was very beautiful and very moving. But anyway, that was the inspiration for what I want to do here. Now, knowing my background, of course, from a few episodes back, you know that I came from a Pentecostal fundamentalist background. My father has become a lot more fundamentalist over the years than he was to start with, but, you know, it's still... So it's gotten worse. My younger brother, who's the other one that this is kind of addressed to, and he's never going to hear it, is an ultra-conservative, is as far conservative right as I am left, maybe even more so. So that's what we're dealing with on this. But where I wanted to start was this first thing is this, where I think a lot of this stems from is this, I call it an argument of a sovereign God. Why don't I just show it to you here? You'll see it on the screen when I pop it up. This person, and I blocked out his name because I don't want to embarrass him, says, if I paint a picture and then decide to destroy it, even though it's well done and by all standards very pleasing, that's my own business. If the painting could speak, it would not have recourse but to accept its fate. It's my creation, and as such, I have the sovereign right to do with it as I please, no matter how it feels about the situation. We are God's creation. He has the sovereign right to destroy us for absolutely no reason if he so chooses, and we would have no right to say so, or say so in the matter. This sovereign God loved us enough to provide us a way to get right by him, even though there was no compelling reason whatsoever to do so. Folks want to judge God for punishing sin, but completely forget that he's provided a way out of eternal punishment. So much to break down here. And later, I did break this down a little bit. I'll leave it up on the screen for just a little bit more so you can kind of get a better idea of what we're dealing with. And he came back and said, how can you say that this is such a bad, evil God? This is a God of love because he died for our sins and this and that. And so here's where my problems with it break down. Now, first, we got to ask, what is he saving us from? I mean, yeah, I know it's the whole sin, original sin, this, that, and everything. Adam, Eve made choice, ate fruit, thus original sin. This is the idea. And this is a whole part of the creationist mentality. So let's see. Let's start here with Genesis 2. In Genesis 2, it talks about how God creates the entire universe, creates the world. And then after he gets finished making all of this other stuff, he builds this garden, puts man into it, and puts the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the center. That's in there. Now let's break that down. We've got God being this, according to Christian sources, this God, and Jewish and Muslim too, but this God is all-seeing, he's all-knowing, he's all-powerful, and everywhere at once. Omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, just all of this. He already knows what's going to happen if he puts that tree there. But he does it anyway. He knows what's going to happen. If he didn't know what was going to happen, or if he didn't know what was going to happen, then he's not all-knowing. And if human choice could change his desire on that, then he's not all-powerful. So right there, the argument starts to break down, but let's drop a little bit further here with this. Because you got Adam and then Eve, who've basically been around for what? according to this, a few days, maybe a few weeks. Their concept of the world is like a toddler, more or less. According to this being the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there's no way to know right from wrong until they eat from this tree. So in order to know they did wrong, they have to do it. Okay, so far we're having a little bit of a mind screw there. But let's keep going in this too. But God knows that this tree is dangerous. And so he puts it in the middle of the garden with no kind of stuff there and tells them don't touch it. Now, anybody that's a parent knows exactly what's going to happen if you take a toddler, put him in a room, set an open bottle of bleach in the middle of the floor and say, don't touch this. What's going to happen? What kind of parent am I to even leave something like that, something dangerous to my child, in the middle of the floor where he can get to it when he doesn't know any better? And he'll probably drink it and be poisoned. So right off the bat, we're seeing God as a negligent parent at least. Because like I said, there's no knowledge of good and evil at this point. So then they eat this tree. And then, this whole rigmarole on that. But God knew that they were going to do it. You can say, well, it was free will. He could have chose whether or not. They could choose whether or not to, and they did. Not from God's perspective. God already knew the outcome. The outcome was already set in stone as far as he was concerned. Free choice in and of itself was an illusion. The only people that thought they had free choice were Adam and Eve, and they really didn't because God already knew what was happening. It was already set in stone. So this is something that was already set in stone, was created to happen. And they get blamed, and not only do they get in trouble for it, but everybody down the line after that does. But not just in a little bit of trouble either, no. No, Christianity takes it up to 11 and decides that there's going to be this place, this hell, this eternal punishment for sin, this eternal damnation for something that God could have easily prevented if he hadn't put the tree there in the first place. Or if he had created Adam and Eve to not have a desire for it. Because remember, he's God. He can do any of this. And so I don't see, first of all, where this is a great loving thing to do. But let's take this a step further now. We're going to go further down. We're going to jump over 2,000 or so years, or actually about 6,000 years or so. We're going to go we're going to stay in the Middle East, either Nazareth or Bethlehem. It depends on which gospel you read. God decides to impregnate a 14-year-old virgin girl. But not with just any kind of baby. No, this baby is God himself. This is completely God, completely man. So this God-man who is God is born, has to grow up, wait 33 years or so, according to what most scholars believe it was before he could start teaching as a rabbi. Then he is convicted of some kind of crime. He's crucified. He dies on the cross, but because he's God, he can't really die because he's God. He's immortal. Right? So, but he does die. And then 3 days later, he gets up. He comes out of the tomb, talks to his followers for a while, goes back up to heaven. And this is a blood sacrifice that he does himself to forgive men for sins that he could very well have prevented himself by not even put the situation in there in the first place. But all of this rigmarole, instead of just not putting the tree there or making them not have the desire for that tree, doesn't really infringe on their free will because there's plenty of other fruit they could choose from. Just because you take one choice away doesn't mean you ruin somebody's free will. And besides, if God is all-knowing and God already knew the outcome, then was there really free will? Not a great plan. This plan makes no sense. And second of all, let's look at this idea of the sovereign Lord business, or this sovereign God that could destroy anybody. He could destroy us in the blink of an eye if he wants to. I don't get it. See, because he created beings that he supposedly wants a relationship with, that he supposedly loves. Where's the motivation to destroy them if he loves them? we're not paintings. We're not some monument. We are living, thinking human beings. And any God that would consider destroying us, again, on a whim, when he says supposedly he wants a relationship with us, no, that is not a great person. That's not a great God. You wouldn't consider that to be even a good person. So this part doesn't make sense, but this idea of sovereign God goes beyond that. I mean, even beyond just this wonky philosophy kind of thing. I mean, let's look at some of the things that we've gone through in this. This God also tells you that you're worthless without him. That he loves you so much that he did all this stuff for you, so you deserve death. You deserve to be punished. And without him, you should be punished. But he forgave you. So we don't have to worry about that anymore, right? Unless you don't believe. There's the kicker. Unconditional love, but there's a condition. And even then, is it really love? I mean, think about the kind of relationships that it's setting up here. I mean, we're talking about, as far as from our end of it goes, we believe we're worthless. We are nothing without this being, that we deserve punishment. And if he does punish us, it's our fault for messing up. It's all our fault. We're horrible. We're awful. We can do nothing without him. What does this sound like? This sounds like every speech that ER nurses hear from battered spouses. It's the exact same speech. But he loves me. He beats me because I was bad, because I wasn't quiet, or I didn't get dinner just right. It's my fault. I'm the one that's horrible. He's everything, and without him, I'm nothing. I couldn't live without him. I couldn't live without her. Battered spouse, abusive relationship. That's what this is. You're calling this love? It's not love, it's abuse. And it sets you up for a lot of stuff down the road that gets even worse. Because if you think you're worthless without this God and without this church, you become dependent on that. Nothing in your life makes sense without that. You feel like you can't do anything. And in a way, it holds you back. And you can get a lot of people that have come out of religion came out of it with a super low self-esteem because they felt like they were so worthless. Because no matter what they did, they couldn't be perfect. They couldn't be without sin. It happens. We're imperfect people. We're imperfect. We're human. But they would feel so awful and so hated coming out of religion that nobody could love them. That's one way that it's harmful. And in another, even more messed up way, by the same token, you could become just a complete egotistical asshole. And you see a lot of Christians, these Christians that are, because they're saved. And if you're not saved, well, you're not part of the club. You know, you're one of those outsiders, and we don't have to feel the same about you. And they look down their noses at other people. It becomes an other, us and them. So, you know, so far that's right off the bat two ways, but let's go even further. Let's go to another spot here. Let's talk about this thing with climate change and with evolutionary theory. Now, we're not going to talk about the theories themselves, at least I'm not going to get into them in detail. But with evolution, they don't want to hear anything about it, even though this is the basis of most of our biologies. It's the basis of germ theory, of modern medicine. All of this is based on evolutionary theory. We have the evidence that shows that this is likely how things happened. We have the transitional fossils. At least we would have, but the people that are creationists keep moving the goalpost and saying, well, that's not really a transition because it doesn't go from this to this. And then we find that. And they say, well, yeah, but it doesn't do this. And then they just keep moving it back. But we have several transitional fossils between Australopithecus, I can't even say the word, and Homo sapien. We have several transitional fossils to this. So we know that it happened. And that's the only thing really that that keeps evolution out of their minds, is because it takes that sovereignty away from God. Because God supposedly made us out of the dust of the earth and created us to be special. We're not just simple animals. We can't be, because our sovereign God made us this way, and that's what he said. So you see? And when you start to distrust the sciences in that, there's other things that they can tell you that, God's sovereignty. Well, God's going to take care of this with climate change. We don't have to worry about climate change. You've got either the folks that say, well, God is going to fix it. He can fix it. He will fix it. Or the folks that are being, Jesus is coming back at any time. What does it matter? We're going to, the world's pretty much fucked anyway. No. You've been waiting now over 2,000 years. It ain't happening. I'm sorry. Okay. I remember hearing this from the time I was about 7 years old, all the way through my teen years, that Jesus was coming any minute. No, it's not happening. Okay? He even has to backtrack the date several times. They have to backtrack the date several times in the Gospels because they kept missing it. The Millerites in the 1800s, they said it was going to, they missed it twice. That was the birth of the Seventh-day Adventist. They missed it twice. And even if it was, ask yourself this too. If you can't take care of this planet, if you're not being a quote-unquote good steward like the Bible tells you to be and taking care of the resources, what makes you think you're going to get that new kingdom? Because God forgave you for your sins. But what? I don't get it. And then there's the climate change denial. That no, the climate isn't changing, and we know it's not changing because the Bible's, because it's in God's control. You had Jim Einhoff, the senator from Oklahoma, famously sat a few years ago, famously stood up in the Capitol, in the Senate chamber, holding a snowball, claiming that snowball proved that there was no global warming. No, folks, it's happening, whether you want to believe it or not. And the reason people don't believe it is because they don't trust the science. It's this whole sovereign God is in control of everything. We don't have to worry about it. He'll fix it. And if he doesn't fix it, well, that's because it's the end of the world and he's coming back. That's the mentality. That's what I hear from you. And it even breaks into families. One conversation I had with my own father. This was over Facebook when a cousin of mine posted about these gay conversion camps that parents were sending their teenagers to, and they were very abusive camps. These are places that don't work. They even tell you that they don't work. They're not going to change orientation. All they're going to do is make it easier to hide it, make it easier to suppress it. That doesn't change it. And she said how horrible this was, and my own father comes back and says, well, if everything would be okay if people would just mind their own business. And I was like, well, I hope you mean just mind your own business and not worry about, and love your child anyway. He says, no, I just mean mind your own business. Don't get into it. In other words, it's not our problem. It's that family's problem because the father in that family has sovereignty, because God granted that sovereignty in the Bible to the man of the house. So he can do whatever he wants with his family. So you can do the gay conversion. You can tell your wife to vote however you want her to vote. You control ironclad control over your kids. But it gets worse. Again, like I said, these things get worse. If we went today over to Idaho, the state of Idaho has a law on the books that exempts parents from any wrongdoing if they take their child to a faith healer instead of a doctor. And if that child dies, the parents cannot be charged for abuse, neglect, manslaughter, or murder. As far as the state of Idaho is concerned, they have no culpability at all for their dead child. There was a little girl that died. She was 12 years old. This happened a few years ago. She was 12 years old. She had type 1 diabetes. Her parents wouldn't take her to a doctor. Instead, they relied on their church's faith healing, and it laid hands on her. And she died. She was only 12. Type 1 diabetes, I've got, family that's lived a long time with that. Medical treatment, with proper medical treatment. But instead, they went to this faith healer because their God is in control and could choose who lives or dies. And then, as far as they're concerned, if God didn't heal her, it was either the parents' fault for not believing strongly enough, or God just decided not to. That's in the parents' minds. And that's what comes from this. And there's no repercussions. There's no nothing. And they're free to do it again. That's what's wrong with this idea. And that's what's wrong with this kind of a religion that takes away your own self-worth, that tells you that you're awful. You're not in control. Nothing is your fault, really. Because if it's not God blessing you, it's the devil tempting you. It's the devil attacking you. All of the bad things in your life are from that. It's not because of anything that you've done. Everything is a spiritual battle. No. Sometimes shit happens. Okay? That's the way the universe works. Bad things happen. Good things happen. It's even in your Bible, Ecclesiastes. It's all meaningless. Shit happens. It rains on the just and the unjust alike. And sometimes you just get screwed. There's no magic in that. And people are worth something. And any God that doesn't think so, and if you tell me that this God could even consider wiping me out on a whim, or wants to punish me for the way he created me, as an imperfect, flawed human being who's going to screw up. We're going to fuck up. But if I don't do his certain specific recipe, he's going to punish me for eternity. For a list of sins that's, according to you guys, less than a blink of an eye. We're gone like that. But we're going to sit there and roast for eternity? Just to please him? That's sadistic. That's sadism. That's abuse. And even if that God does exist, that's not the kind of God I want to worship. That's not the kind of God that I could even think of worshiping. So that's my spiel. It's the stuff that's happening. You guys, we're going to have to... I'm not telling you to give up on God. What I am telling you if what you believe comes in conflict with the facts, you got to go with the facts. That's all there is to it. Well, that's going to do it for tonight, guys. Next week, like I said, I'm going to have Rachel Nana Brown on here. We're going to talk all kinds of stuff about evolution. If you've got questions, you can email them to me at brotherbrewer@skepticsbrewpub.com or message me, facebook.com/beer and blasphemy. Either way, and I'll get those to Rachel and we'll get some answers out for you. Until next time, I'm Brother Brewer. Remember, believe nothing that you hear, half of what you see, and never have serious conversation without a 2-drink minimum. Good night, guys. The views expressed on the show are those of the host and do not reflect the views of Spreaker or of any other podcast hosting app. Skeptics Brew Pub is solely responsible for its content. If you'd like to support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/Skeptics Brew Pub, where you can make a per-episode donation and also become a member of the Irreligious Order of St. Hitchens, or Oh Shit. You can also find us on the web at skepticsbrewpub.com. Copyright 2017, Skeptics Brew Pub. All rights reserved.